before I show you a video, I just want to say a few words. I believe that what's going on in the world today, and you know, I've been preaching, the last 2 sermons were on Jesus is the Messiah. And this is in the context of what's going on in Israel, because in Israel there is a whole movement of people who believe that Messiah is yet to come, a different Messiah, not Jesus. So I've been preaching this series, the Jesus of the New Testament, Jesus of the first century is the true Messiah. So this has three sermons, and this is the 3rd one. This is the last one. And I believe that we are in the middle of a war between religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. And I believe that this war is the war for religious supremacy, to control the whole world. That's what I believe. And what we have right now is, imagine if people who are in charge of these 3 religions are extremists. Just imagine that. So for example, in Islam, you have the nation of Iran, right? You have the nation of Afghanistan, where they have Taliban. And these are religious extremists, and they're in charge of those 2 countries, for example. And they are so extreme that they are following all of the ancient laws, basically of the Old Testament, because all 3 religions come from Abraham. So women in Afghanistan, women can't go to the school. Little girls are not allowed to go to the school. They're supposed to marry when they're 13, 14 years old, have kids, you know, that's their life. They're living according to the ancient code. So you have that already in several Muslim countries, where the Islamist extremists are in power. So now we have a situation where the Zionist extremists are in charge of Israel. I mean, this is a fact. Their prime minister has elected and selected and appointed to the government people who are religious extremists, who believe in that the Holy Land, Palestine, is the home only for the Jews, and not just all the Jews, but for the religious Jews, for the faithful Jews. And they are taking steps now to basically cleanse that land, get everybody out, so that they can possess that territory all to themselves. Now, let me ask you a question. So you already have Iran, which is like the 6th most powerful army in the world, military, that's run by the extremists. You have Israel, that's extremely powerful military in the world. They're run by extremists. What happens when and if you get somebody in Christianity, and America is still the Christian country, Europe is not. Europe is not Christian. Let's understand that. In Europe, you have Catholic countries, and you have some Protestant countries in Scandinavia. And in Scandinavia and most of the Northern Europe, people don't go to church. In England, people don't go to church. You have Catholic countries like Poland and Italy, but most of the people there are secular. They call themselves Catholic, but they are really not. You can't say it's a Christian country. You can say it's a Catholic country, but it's really not a Christian country because nobody goes to church. And then you have the United States, where you still have about 40% of the population who claims that they are Christian, and where you still have a very strong evangelical movement, and where you have, you know, literally 150 million people out of the 360 that would say and call themselves a Christian. What happens if in America you get somebody who is the extremist in the Christian sense? And the extreme Christians, like we have had in world history during the Crusades, they are also bent on conquering, subduing. During the Middle Ages, Catholic Church was extreme. So they were literally forcing people and nations and tribes to convert to Catholicism at the point of a sword. That's Christian extremism. You follow me, right? That's Christian extremism. In other words, all of these extremists within these major religions, they have one thing in common, and that is they all say, we are the chosen one. In Israel, the extremists say, we are God's chosen people, and therefore we are on top of the pyramid and everybody else is below us. In Islam, you have the same thing. The extremists, they will say, God had revealed himself to our prophet, Muhammad, and he was the last prophet to receive the literal word from God, so we are number one, and we have the right to go against all of the other people and destroy and kill and whatever. Now, so we already have this happening in Islam and Judaism. What happens if you get somebody extreme here in this country? And I don't think that Trump, who is right now going to be the new president, that he's religiously extreme. What happens if something happens to him? And his vice president, who is religiously extreme, becomes a president. And then you have a clash of civilizations. So I'm going to do a whole new series on this, potentially what could happen after January with the world. But today I wanted to do something else. I wanted to show that even though there are differences between the three religions, there are still commonalities. And there are still things that we all have in common. And from the leadership standpoint and from the leadership philosophy, I would say this. There are leaders in this world, when they become a leader, they focus on the differences between the groups that they are managing. So, for example, you can get a president in this country who is going to focus on the differences between the liberals and the conservatives. And this is what has been going on now between both Democrats and Republicans here in this country. Whoever comes into power, they focus on the differences. They call each other names, and they say that the other party is responsible for the destruction of America, and on and on and on it goes. But from a leadership perspective, if you have a person who comes in and they focus on what we all have in common, then you can do a lot more. You can accomplish a lot more. So, for example, you have I'm going to use the example of the United States and China. In the United States, we tend to focus on differences between us. In our government focuses on the differences between them. And they obstruct each other all the time. Well, in China, you have one party. And they say, and Jolie, you can correct me after services if I'm wrong. And that one party says, we're going to focus on our nation, on our Chinese identity, on our prosperity. So we're going to build a railroad that goes all the way from China to Paris, 10,000 kilometers, 6,000 miles. We're going to focus on economy. And there is and in that system, they don't have another party that says, oh no, we're going to obstruct because it's the Democrats that want to do it or the Republicans that want to do it. So we're not going to give them the votes. So they just go and build it. So if you have leadership that focuses on things that we have in common, then you can build things. If you have leaders who focus on the things that we are different from each other, then they're going to tear things apart. So that's what I'm saying. If you get somebody here in this country who wants to focus on the differences, we're going to have a chaos in this world, maybe even a nuclear war. So I wanted to point out some of the things that we have in common and how we all can understand each other better. But because of this extremism that's going on right now in Israel, I'm going to show you, by the way, a video that's only like 30 seconds or a minute, but it's pretty disturbing. So if you don't want to see it, just don't watch it. But it's pretty disturbing. It's a bunch of refugees or Palestinians running away from being bombed. But this is what happens when you have extremists in power on both sides. So let's show quickly the video, and then we'll go to the main body of the sermon. This is mild. What I'm showing you is mild because it's church and we have people who are sensitive. Okay, you can go to the PowerPoint for the sermon. But I would like to tell you, those of you who can and who have the ability, go and look it up on your own computer. You don't have to come to church for me to show you disturbing videos. You can find them all over the place. And do this research for yourself. All because there is a clash of religions, and there is a clash over the territory, and there is a clash over the supremacy. And this can go on for another 2,000 years, just like it has been going on for the last 3,000 years, the fight between Jews and the Muslims. And then the Christians, they came into the mix, and they did the same thing for the last 1,000 years, depending on who's in power. If you get extremists in power, you're going to have this. If you get normal people in power, then you get something totally different. What do we have in common? Point number one, shared ancestry and monotheism. So the way this presentation is made, I'm going to show you what the Old Testament says. This is Judaism. Then I'm going to show you what the New Testament says, and then I'm going to show you what Quran says, and we're going to go over 5 points that all three religions have in common: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So number one, Hebrew Bible, Genesis 17:5 says, "No longer shall your name be called Abram." I read this last week, but we need to repeat it now. "But your name shall be Abraham." This is when God was calling Abraham to come out of Samaria and go into the land of Palestine. So God is changing his name and says, your name is going to be Abraham, for I have made you the father of a multitude of nations. Now, this is a very important text. It didn't say just one nation. People who are extreme in Israel, in Judaism, they will say, oh, Abraham is only our father. We are the chosen ones. But God says here that he was going to make Abraham the father of a multitude of nations, not just one nation. So when you look at this explanation, this verse highlights Abraham as the father of a multitude, a patriarch who is honored, obviously, by Jews and by Christians, and also by people who follow Islam. Now, if you go to New Testament and you look at what New Testament has to say on this topic, Galatians 3:28 and 29, it says, there is neither Jew nor Greek. So people right now, people who are running Israel, who are in charge of Israel, they don't agree with this because obviously they don't believe in the New Testament. So for them, there is only Jew. Greek is a Gentile. Greek is a Goim. Greek is somebody who is a pagan to them. But this is the extremist view. Not all the Jews believe this, and not all of the Jews agree with this. But in the New Testament, in Christianity, this is what we follow. There is neither Jew nor Greek. In other words, nobody is above somebody else. There is neither slave nor free. There is no male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. So he says all of the people are part of Jesus' tribe. We are part of the tribe of Jesus. And if you are Christ, look at this next part, then you are Abraham's offspring, heirs according to promise. So now in Christianity, we come in as the followers of Jesus and we say, whoa, wait a minute. It's not just that the Jewish people are the only chosen people, because we believe that we are also heirs to the promise that God made to Abraham when he called him to leave Samaria and go to Palestine. But the point is that both Jews and Christians hold Abraham in high regard. I don't want to say venerate, but we hold Abraham in high regard. We hold Abraham as the father of both the Jews and the Christian, because according to the New Testament, Paul says, you are Abraham's offspring. So in Christianity, this is what we believe, and this is important for you and all of us to learn and to know, because I think that this fight between Judaism and Christianity is only going to escalate. So far in American history, in modern American history, there has been a fight between Christianity and Islam. And Judaism has basically been embraced. And you always hear people talk about Judeo-Christian values and what all we have in common with Judaism. But now that you have a different breed of extremist Jewish leaders in Israel, this fight between Christianity and Judaism is going to only increase and escalate in intensity. Because they do not regard this to be true. They do not regard Jesus to be true and all of that stuff. And I know when I say this, it sounds like it's a bad thing that I'm saying about them. But it's a fact. You can look at it. You can look at the references yourself. You can research and look and see exactly what some of these people say about Christianity. But then we go to the explanation. Paul's message emphasizes unity and shared heritage under Abraham, encouraging believers to see themselves as part of one family. So as a Christian, I have always seen myself as having things in common with Jewish believers, with people who go to synagogue, with Judaism, because we believe in the same God, we believe in the same father Abraham, we believe in Christianity that Jesus came from Abraham. So I always saw myself as a Christian as somebody who had a lot in common with Jewish people and people who follow Judaism. I see them as my brothers. You know, at least I did for a long time until all of these things started happening here in Gaza in the last year, and then I started doing more research, and then I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Because what's going on over there does not represent, in my opinion, my Jewish friends that I have had for many years. It does not represent their views, that's for sure, but it's happening. So I'm trying to dig deep and find out what's going on here. But Christians believe that we are one family with the Jewish people. We all come from, once we accepted Jesus, we have the heritage that comes from Abraham. But what's interesting is what Muslims say. In Quran 384, it says, say we have believed in Allah, and Allah is the name that they use for God, basically God, the Father. We have believed in Allah and what has been revealed to us, and what has been revealed to who? Abraham, and Ishmael, and Isaac, and Jacob, and the descendants. I didn't know that this verse existed. I didn't know that they believed this. And then look at what it says further. And what was given to Moses and Jesus. So in Islam, you have people who follow Islam who are not extremists and who believe this. You see what I'm getting at? You can be a Christian and you can go into the Bible and you can find a verse that in your mind can justify a murder. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because there are verses in the Bible where it says that you ought to kill this and that and whatever. And if you go to those verses, you can say, oh yeah, I'm justified in murdering this person because in the Bible, they used to do it. You can go into Quran. You can go into Old Testament. And you can find things that you like to hear. And then build your own philosophy around that. And what was given to Moses and Jesus and the prophets from their Lord, we make no distinction between any of them, and we are Muslim in submission to Him, to God. So we all have in common this reverence for God who created us. So we can focus on that. Or we can focus on the differences. People who want war, they focus on the differences. And they'll point to what this group, Hamas, what they've done on October 7. And they're going to point to what Taliban is doing in Afghanistan, which is tremendous atrocities. And they're going to point to Iran and Saudi Arabia and some of these countries where you live under the oppressive regimes and human rights and all of that stuff. And people who want war with Jews, they are going to point out to what Jews are doing in Israel for the last 70 years and in Gaza, and murder and mayhem and stealing the land and pushing the natives out of the way, you know, all of that stuff. So people who want war, they will focus on the differences. Next thing that we have in common, peace and compassion, point number 2. In the Micah 6:8, this is Hebrew Bible. He has told you, O man, what is good and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice and to love kindness and walk humbly with your Lord. So this verse emphasizes justice, kindness, and humility. And again, these are the values that all three religions have in common. So that's slide number 13, Perun. And then we go to slide number 14, which is Matthew 5:9, which says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. So again, you're talking about what do these three religions have in common? Well, we should be seeking peace. If I'm a Christian, I should be seeking peace. Jesus is saying, blessed are the peacemakers. Now, when I look at this, I also see a practical application for my daily life. I should be a peacemaker in my views of other religions. I should also be a peacemaker in my family. I should be a peacemaker at my work. I should be a peacemaker in my church. I should be a peacemaker in my neighborhood. I have a couple of neighbors who are always fighting with each other. And I'm nice to both of them. Back in the old country, I have cousins who are fighting with each other. And then I come and they're like, well, come to my house, don't go to his house. You know, and then I go to their house and then they're like, the other one is, well, how are you there? Went to their house first. You should come to my house first, you know. Because they're fighting, and now I want to bring peace. I want them to get along. I want my neighbors to get along in my cul-de-sac So that way, when little kids, there is one family that has little kids, when they come out to play in the cul-de-sac, they don't have to hear cuss words and F words from neighbors who don't like each other. So I would like to make peace. And the same thing with my friends and people who are of a different religion. I would like us as Christians to have peace with both Jews and Muslims. Why not? Why not have peace? There is always going to be extremists in every group who are going to try to disrupt that peace. Plant a bomb somewhere so it kills a bunch of people. Assassinate somebody. Start a war. Invade another country. There are always extremists. But God is calling us, all of us, Christians, Jews, and Muslims, to seek peace. And all three religions talk about it. The verse from Jesus' Sermon on the Mount encourages peacemaking, which is a central value for fostering understanding and compassion across religion. And peacemaking is a central value that fosters a healthy relationships and life, even on a practical basis. I have a friend who just lost a job because he got into a fight with somebody on the job. And he told me about this, a young man that's been helping out here at the church. And I told him, you're new at that job. He says, but the other guy is pushing my buttons. The other guy is pushing. He's calling me names. I said, let it be. Leave it alone. You are new. The boss is going to take this man's side because this man has been on that job for years and years and years. Just walk away. Well, he couldn't do it. So they got into a fight. And guess what? The boss fired the young guy because he's new on the job. Try to tell him, make peace. Try to make peace. Sometimes you can't. Let's be realistic. Sometimes a person or somebody's going to push you so far that you can't. Maybe you'll have to defend yourself. But don't initiate. Try to do everything that's in your power to resolve the situation properly. In Quran, it says, O mankind, we have created you from a male and a female and made you peoples and tribes that you may know one another. Indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous of you. And this verse again calls for understanding and respect among diverse peoples, suggesting that righteousness is the true measure of a person's worth. And you know this is true, isn't it? Righteousness. Now, in Christianity, we believe that righteousness is something that is given to us by Jesus. They believe that you have to earn it. You have to be righteous. In Christianity, we believe that Jesus' righteousness has been ascribed to me, has been projected on me. But also, there is a pitfall there, because then a lot of Christians say, oh, I can do what I want to do because Jesus died for me, and now I don't have to be righteous. No, you still got to be righteous. You still be righteous means do the right thing. You still got to do the right thing. You can't be like one of those people that, you ever see these mafia movies where they go and kill people, and then they go to a church and to confessional and say, Father, forgive me, for I have sinned, and then they go and kill somebody else next week. No, that's not Christianity. Righteousness. All three religions have that in common. Justice and mercy is another one. In the Old Testament, in Leviticus 19:18, it says, you shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against the sons of your own people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. Now, some people are going to say, see, they're talking only about your own people. But in the Old Testament, you have many places where it's talking about mercy. It's talking about loving your neighbor. It's talking about not going against somebody who is not going against you. This verse is a part of the holiness code, and it teaches us to love one's neighbor. The idea is shared across all three of these religions. And this is not always easy. We can't always love everybody, right? We can't love our neighbors. Sometimes we can't love even our kin, our relatives. And how are we going to love our neighbors? But yet this is a common teaching across all three religions. In New Testament, in Luke 6, it says, be merciful just as your Father is merciful. Jesus calls his followers to practice mercy. So, and then you go to Quran 5:8, O you who have believed, be persistently standing firm for Allah, witnesses injustice, and do not let the hatred of a people prevent you from being just. Be just, that is nearer to righteousness. So all three religions teach justice and mercy. But do we focus on that? Do our leaders focus on that? Do we go to people and say, hey, let's talk about what we have in common. Let's talk about what we can build instead of what we can tear down. This verse emphasizes justice even toward those one may dislike, underscoring a commitment to fairness is a virtue in all circumstances. And again, this is something that we can apply to our own daily life. Commitment to fairness in all circumstances. There are circumstances where we say, oh, this circumstance allows me not to be fair. Because of the circumstance, I'm not going to be fair. Because this person has done something to me, so I don't have to be fair to them. But the Bible, all the New Testament and Quran, is calling people to be just and to be committed to being fair in all of our dealings with other people. And I would say, from the perspective of Jesus' teachings, not just to be fair, but to go out of your way to be fair, even if it's going to hurt you, even if it's going to hurt your own interest. It's better to be fair and lose even money than not to be fair and gain something, at least according to Jesus. Somebody asks you for a shirt, give them a coat. Let's see what's next. Peron, which slide were we on? Do you know? Seeking God in humility. Let me see if I can find that. Seeking God in humility, that's the next one. Okay. In Hebrew Bible, Psalm 24, 3 and 4. There we go. Who may ascend the mountain of the Lord? Who may stand in his holy place? The one who has clean hands and a pure heart, who does not trust in an idol or swear by a false god. In the explanation, the verse emphasizes inner purity and sincerity in seeking God, a common theme, again, in all three religions. In James chapter 4, verse 10, it says, humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will exalt you. So both Old Testament and New Testament, Judaism and Christianity, teaching that humility is important. Humility before God is encouraged here, fostering a spirit of humility and respect for others, which can bridge divides. And one of the issues that we have in the modern society is that nobody's humble anymore. Everybody wants to be somebody. Everybody wants to be better than somebody. Everybody. A lot of people want to show off. A lot of people want to, stand out. The humility not bragging, not boasting, not talking about your own accomplishments. That's rare to find. Because I don't know. I think maybe collectively as a society we lack this sense of worth of who we are. So we have to show off. Maybe we're not enough, So we have to show off with all of the other external successes and things and so on. In Quran, it says, Quran 31, and do not turn your cheek in contempt toward people, and do not walk through the earth exultantly. Interesting, isn't it? Indeed, Allah does not like everyone self-deluded and boastful. And be moderate in your pace and lower your voice. Interesting, isn't it? A lot of people don't lower their voice. A lot of people want to be heard over everybody else. We see that today, we see that phenomena really on the social media. Who has more followers, who has bigger voice, who has bigger reach, who has more this, who has more, And in Islam, they believe, hey, you know what? Be humble, just keep your mouth shut. Don't brag too much, just be normal. So you see how much in common we have with each other? When I say, do you see how much we have in common with each other? We does not include people who are extremists. It includes normal Christians, Jews, and Muslims who want to live at peace with each other, who don't care that the other religion is different from their own, who want to be at peace with their neighbors, who want to trade and work and build and grow families and live a normal life. That's what I mean when I say we. I don't mean people who are on the fringes in any one of these three religions. But these are the people that can literally bring the whole world to the precipice of destruction. And then the majority of us who are not that way, we are going to be the collateral damage. Okay, let's see. We're almost to the end. Yeah, one more, and this is it. Encouragement toward forgiveness. This is another extremely important one, isn't it? Proverbs 10:12. Hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all offenses. I mean, this is Old Testament. If the extremist person says, oh yeah, I'm the chosen people and everybody else is not worthy, well, I'm sorry. Even in the Old Testament, it says that love covers all offenses. Even in the Old Testament, Proverbs, the wisdom teachings. How many of the wisdom teachings out there are teaching good relations with people and fairness and justice? And it is my sense that the majority of believers, and by believers I include all three religions, my sense is that majority of the believers want to live this way. I don't want to hate Jews or Muslims. I want to learn. What do they believe? Why do they believe? I want to learn their customs. I want to try their food. I want to talk to them. I want to find what we have in common. I don't want to go burn a mosque down or burn a synagogue down, burn some church down, because in Christianity we have people who want to burn some other church down because that church doesn't agree with what their church says. I believe that the majority of the believers want to live this way. No hate, love, and peace. That's what I believe. But the majority of the people doesn't have the voice. Except you do, and you can, by how you behave towards others. We can have the voice. This proverb encourages love and forgiveness to overcome conflict. This is the Old Testament. A theme that resonates with both Christian and Islamic teachings on compassion. In Christianity, in Ephesians 4:32, it says, "Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, as God in Christ forgave you." We believe this. We teach this. We teach this, and yet our government will send millions of dollars in bombs and 500-pound bomb to, over there so they can bomb some apartment building. But we believe this. I believe that. But I don't control what they do with my money that comes out of my pocket and goes to them. I don't control that. I don't know, the way things are shaping up, I think in the next 3, 4, 5 years, there could be some major problems. All over the world. All over the world. And this is not in reference to Trump being the president. I mean, it's in reference to just the direction in which the country is going. Donald Trump is one person, Joe Biden is one person, Obama is just one person. But when you look at the whole sector of all of these people who are in power, when you look at people who are in power in the State Department, when you look at the people who are in power in Iran, when you look at the people who are in power in Russia now, I mean, you're talking about some seriously extremist people running a lot of these very powerful countries that are armed to the teeth. So that in that sense, I think we can have all kinds of stuff happen in the next couple of years. What are we going to do as Christians? I think we should preach this. I think we should preach that we need to love each other. Forgiveness is key here, promoting kindness and mutual understanding as ways to strengthen community. Kindness. In Quran it says, "But indeed, if one is patient and forgives, that is of the matters worthy of resolve." One needs to be patient and to forgive. And this verse in Quran praises patience and forgiveness, aligning with the emphasis on mercy in Jewish and Christian teachings. So we have gone just through 5 major things that these 3 religions, that all 3 come from Abraham, have in common. And the reason I preach this sermon is because I would like us as Christians to be researching, to be open-minded, and to understand other people. I don't want us to be people who are throwing rocks at other people. I want us to be people who are inviting other people to a dinner, to a potluck. I don't want us to be people who judge everybody all the time. I think we ought to be better than that. We ought to be like Jesus. That's why I say, if we preach what Jesus teaches without condemning everybody else for their beliefs, that's what I think draws people to Jesus. But if you condemn everybody and then you try to tell them about Jesus, they don't want to hear it. But if you love them, if you help them when they are in need, if you give them a glass of cold water on a hot day, if you give them a spoonful of hot rice when they're hungry, if you give them a coat when they're about to sleep on the sidewalk, and it's going to be 10 degrees outside. That's what Jesus would do. Now, if Jesus was here right now, what would he do with Jews and Christians and Muslims? What would he do? I know what he would do. We know what he would do. He would do exactly what he did back then. He would say to all of us, come to me. Right? Come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened. Come to me. And that's what we ought to do. We ought to call people to come to Jesus. And come to me. If you need help, come to me. The United States used to be a country that, and still is to a large degree, that helps a lot of different. You know, with all of the dysfunction that we have in the government and wars and this and that, we still have a country that helps tremendously all over the world with people who are starving and with people who are dying and with people who are being genocide in many parts of the world. This is now, this thing that's happening, it's a stain on our country. And it's a sign of the poor leadership that we have. No diplomacy. But overall, you know, this is a country that has always been there for the destitute. And I think we as Christians ought to continue that tradition, whether our government does it or not. We as Christians ought to continue that tradition, calling people to Jesus and calling people to us when they need help and when they need aid. That's it. No more rambling. One more song. All right.
Sorry, I couldn't skip this.
Okay.